Hey, worship leader, welcome back to the channel. I have a special guest with me today for you, Christopher G. Scott. What's up, man?
Hey, glad to be here. It's long time listener, first time caller. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Every time I say your full name like that, or I see it because it's on like all your tags and stuff, I immediately think of Michael G. Scott. So is
Michael?
that,
Yes,
yeah,
that's close. Yeah, that's right.
which his stands for Gary, some office
That's
trivia.
correct.
What's yours?
That is right. Glenn. So
Glenn.
not quite as cool as Gary, but
Yeah.
yes.
Welcome to the channel. We've passed each other in life several times. We both are worship leaders, and I want to have you on here to just talk about some ministry stuff, get to know you. And today's topic is going to be about like song selection and the process we go through to pastor our people that way. And so that's what we're going to get into. But man, just tell us who you are, where you're serving, where you're from, how many kids you got, anything you want us to know.
Yeah. So again, Christopher G. Scott. I think it's the first time I've ever been introduced that way. So that may be a new handle there. So yeah, Christopher. I am a husband, and my wife Rebecca. I have 4 kids: Evan, Bennett, Asher, and Amelia. My oldest son, just turned 11, and Amelia is 3 years old. So yeah, we've got 11 to 3, and it's a crazy house. We actually, as if that was not punishment enough, we decided we wanted to add a puppy to the mix.
Ooh,
So about 3 weeks ago, we just added a brand new puppy. She is a a golden doodle. My wife can't get it into my head. So she's a golden doodle. She is a handful. We call her Pupzilla, or shark pup, whatever.
yeah.
And
Is she
she's
gonna be
constantly
big?
biting. Yeah.
So
So her
my mom and
parents were
dad
both
have one.
standards. Okay.
My mom and dad have one.
Yeah.
And it's like almost 100 pounds now, and it's a male, so it might be a little bigger. I
Okay.
don't know. The males
Yeah.
tend to be a little bigger, but wow.
Yeah, she'll be about 45 to 60 pounds. So we've seen her parents, and so she'll get big. But that's kind of what we wanted. We wanted something that could run with our 4 kids, and
Right,
no small dogs allowed here.
right.
uh, so that's kind of my family. I am the deacon of worship ministries at Cornerstone Fellowship Church in Apex. Those of you that have not heard of that church, that's okay, because we just rebranded as of earlier last year. We were Sovereign Grace Church in Apex, but we have actually gone to start our own denomination with some former Sovereign Grace churches. It's a whole other story for a whole other podcast. We've got lots of blogs and things like that out there if you are interested. Trinity Fellowship Churches is our new denomination. Still hold to the same tenets. We are Reformed and Continuationist or Charismatic, whatever you want to, however your followers know those denominations. So, but we're unique, and so there wasn't really a denomination that we fit in. We looked at Acts 29, things like that. Don't want to dive too deep into that, but yeah. So we just decided, hey, let's just start our own denomination. So
Why
it's
not?
great. We believe in believers baptism, all those fun things. So, but yeah, we partner with Acts 29 and a lot of other organizations. So yeah, so that's where I serve at. I do serve, which is really unique, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more as we talk about the song vetting. I serve with 3, maybe 4 other worship leaders. So I am not the only guy. I do kind of do all the organizational stuff, all the standard meetings. I run our planning center. I do a lot of the special meetings and things like that. But I serve once or twice a month. So I don't have to be up there every single week, which is really nice. My wife, who with the 4 kids at home, appreciates that.
I envy you.
Yeah, so and we'll talk about this a little later too. So I did serve at a church plant, actually church plant of Open Door. So there's that other connection there. A church plant for about 10 years in Wilson, North Carolina. And yes, there is a callback, and Chris Garrett is the other Chris,
Yeah.
is the leader of the new church that formed off of that church plant. So yeah, lots of interconnected, interweaving spider webs there. But yeah, so anyway, I served there for about 10 years, and that's where we really I served there every single week, and 9 times out of 10, I was there at, before 7, setting up the chairs, setting up the sound system, doing all of that, and they're breaking it down, tearing down way after 1 o'clock on Sundays. So it was a full-time job in and of itself, but a volunteer position. So yeah, that's the life of a church planter, man.
And that's a special calling right there. The tearing up and setting down each and every week. I've done that. I was actually talking with my band last rehearsal, and I was like, "Have any of y'all done that?" And some of them had, but it's a unique time, and I don't miss it.
No, me either. So I've as the pendulum has swung, I have gone completely wireless with all of my gear. So now literally I go and pick up my packs, I plug it in, and we start rehearsal and playing. And so there's no plugging in. I do as little as humanly possible on a given Sunday.
Yeah.
So also a little bit more about me. I work as a business intelligence enablement lead at Genworth Financial here in Raleigh. That just means I get to play with data, and I do a lot of stuff in Tableau. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I don't know if you've taken any personality tests, Myers-Briggs or Enneagram. What are you got a number or some letters to give us to figure out who you are?
I have not landed on an Enneagram. My Myers-Briggs ENFP, so wide open all the time. I'm a very severe extrovert to the fact that COVID has been hard on a lot of people, but it has been extremely hard on extroverts because I have not shut up at home as often. I'm like, oh, you want me to wear a mask? Okay, as long as I get to go out and see people. You want me to go get a vaccine? Done. Like,
yeah,
like just get me out of this house. Let's go back. I need people. And yeah, so when like all the worship conferences, all of my work conferences, everything got canceled this past year. That was the biggest drainer for me and my personality and energy. I just everything was so bundled up, and so it's been crazy. But as a worship leader, I feel like that's kind of like you need a lot of those letters to be a worship leader. I think you can get by if you're an introvert, but I think there's a part of you that needs to be that kind of being around people and getting your energy from that. I feel like that's a big part of being a good worship leader and shepherding people and leading a congregation. All of those aspects kind of don't serve well if you feel like, oh, I'm so drained when I'm around people. Then so
well, I'll push back a little bit. My letters are all the opposite of yours, so no, but you're right. When I took the Myers-Briggs, and it's been a few years now, like several years, and I've taken it more than once, and it's one of those things where depending on the stage of life you're in, that it can change and what, but I've always been pretty close on the I and E letter, pretty in the middle. And the last time I took it, I was more in the I. And then I would just say, I haven't taken it recently, but the quarantine COVID has pushed me more to the I. Like me and my wife were both in the middle, and it's pushed us the opposite. It like revealed that she is more the E. Like we'll be walking down the sidewalk. Now this was early on last year during the quarantine. And I'm still thinking, we got to stay away from people. I'm immunocompromised. We'll see people. We'll see people walking down the sidewalk, and I'm like, turn around, get back to the house. And she's like, oh, who is it? Oh, there's people. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're gonna kill us. But that's being a little dramatic. But yes, I do love people.
For sure.
I find that the more I get, I'm not really charged by it as much. I charge so that I can be around them more. And I'm not extreme introvert. I'm not, I am still in the middle. So I do enjoy getting out. And I think being at home has made me appreciate people more and appreciate the time to protect myself with time and not wear myself so thin all the time, pursuing different things. And so that is my downfall. Taking on way too much has always been a big struggle of mine. So coming into this new role, so that kind of that backstory there that started at the church plant, and then
when my job kind of led us back into Raleigh is when we moved back, I guess about a little over 4 years ago. We kind of, for the first time, I didn't really have to worry about going to a church for a job. So we got to kind of open up, and that's actually the first time we met, was when I had auditioned to play bass at Summit. And then we found Sovereign Grace at the time. So yeah, so that was kind of interesting for us that I had done that for so long, wore so many hats, and that was really where I found a lot of my like self-worth almost. So in doing like, I have to do all of these things in order to kind of prove myself and to make myself busy so that I'm, so that people, look well upon me. And so coming here, I realized how burnt out I had gotten of trying to wear all those hats. So coming into a situation where I knew from day one, hey, it's not only is it not going to be you for the good reasons, but it's also not going to be just you. And you're not the rock star. It's not all on you. It's not for better or for worse. So that kind of was humbling and freeing, and gave me a lot of space, and again, that kind of protecting valuable time and things like that. Now I've added a little bit more hats, but it's been a gradual growth of responsibility as I have kind of grown into the role, which it's been really interesting. So
yeah, that's not what this video is about, but they can skip on if they want, because I really like the idea of the model of having like multiple worship leaders, because, and I say this because, and I've said this probably in every video where I've said this a lot lately, it's just that the worship leader position tends to attract a certain type of person sometimes, people who don't mind being on stage, maybe enjoy being on stage. And sometimes that's kind of what starts it. I mean, it did for me. I'm just being honest. At the very beginning I was just playing acoustic guitar in my bedroom trying to learn songs, and someone was like, hey, we're starting a Saturday night service and we have a band and we need an acoustic player, which, how weird is that? Usually you have the acoustic, you need drums or something. Right. That had every other position except acoustic guitar. And I was like, cool. Like, I get to play with a band on a stage. That's awesome. Yeah. Sign me up. What songs are you playing? I don't care. I'm on stage with a band, so this position can attract certain people, and it may not all be wrong, but if you put your, like you said, if we put our identities in anything other than like leading the church, which this may be a good segue into what our
there we go.
Topic is, if you put your identity or your worth in those other things, you will burn out quick. You won't last long. You won't find joy in it. You'll want to move on to something else. I've just seen it happen too many times, and almost in my own life. You mentioned the Summit, and I remember going from a very small church plant to big Summit with campuses, and I got to do my worship residency there and lead at like the broadcast campus and see myself on the screen while I'm worshiping, and while I was leading worship. And I remember going home that night, because that was kind of like an accomplishment for me. I was like, oh, I can't believe I got to do this. And it was not total selfish, but I went home to my wife that night and I was like, you know what? I'm glad God has called me to worship ministry, not for all these, how many people I'm singing to, because you go home that night and you tuck your kids into bed, and it's just, it is what it is. It was a privilege, but I was like, I'm going to be purposeful not to find my identity in this, because it is very empty. And so, so thinking more pastorally about worship ministry, which is kind of what we're talking about.
That's right.
Picking songs for our church is something that is on this channel. I'll just remind our viewers, on this channel, we talk about three things. We talk about how to lead your teams well. I talk about planning center and organization and digital worship planning, to try to there's that admin side of our job. And there's gear. I love talking about gear. I talk about gear more than anything else, because that's what people on YouTube like to click on. And, right. And then the thing I'm probably most passionate about is pastoring our people and teaching people how to do this. And this is one way we can do this: song selection, song vetting, feeding our people correct songs. So I wanted to just get a little peek behind the window of your ministry, of how you guys go about selecting songs for your church.
Yeah, sure. So the interesting fact, when I came to this church, one of the reasons that we stayed and we joined this church was because of the already existent song library. So I spent, that 10 years that we talked about, I got to create a library for a church from scratch. So it was basically kind of, they knew some hymns, they knew a few random songs that had, kind of gone through the church, but they didn't have a library of their own. And so spending 10 years building a library, I was very, very particular. And so coming into a new church, I was like, well, okay, if my family has to sit under these songs, I want their library to be, to be very similar in what I had kind of built, because that's how I shepherded my family as well as this church. So coming in, this library was already, I'd say, I'm not even being conservative, at least 90% of what my current library was at the old church. So there was like maybe a 10% gap in there, and I mean, primarily a lot of the Sovereign Grace music, just the stuff that I hadn't done before. Being a Sovereign Grace church, if it came out on a Sovereign Grace CD, chances are they were going to do it. So that still kind of rings true. We do a lot of Sovereign Grace music at our church, but we don't feel the pressure to do everything now as we did back then. So I think that was just that 10% gap and a few other songs. But yeah, so coming in and seeing this already well-established library, there wasn't really a pressure to try and mold it into something that it wasn't. It was already a well-established library group of songs that reflected. So I guess maybe start with like a definition. So I think a good library of songs reflects the congregation, or your library will reflect your congregation. I think, I've written a lot of papers on this and talked a lot about this. I think Luther probably was one that said, what you sing tells your theology of your church. And so I think it's kind of in that same kind of vein, that whatever was already built there gave me a sense of, okay, these are the songs these people are singing. They're actually singing them, which was different for me. And from what I could tell in the first couple weeks, first couple months, actually meant what they were singing. Like it actually connected between, the head and the heart, right? They're more so than just singing the words. Like they were feeling these things. They were going through these emotions. They lived out these truths that we were singing. And so I'm like, wow, this set of songs it does reflect these particular people, and these are the kind of people that I want to be in this church with. So as we go through our process, which I'm sure we'll get into, as we go through our process, we think about adding songs. It is typically not what's the newest thing or what a particular person likes. It's an kind of an outgrowth of this. Okay, where are we, and what kind of things are we learning and experiencing, and are there songs, new songs, or there old songs even, that are reflecting that reality? And so that's also reason, again, not for this podcast, but or video, but why songwriting for the church. And just to give, I did go and buy my name is on there, the house music book. Yep. Because I 100% concur with you that we should be, and the author of Caleb, that we should be writing songs that reflect as a body what is going on within our church. And so, to look back at seasons and see where we're growing, where we're suffering, where we're, all of those aspects. So I think that's what the challenge has been over, the 4 years, is introducing new songs, and the songs that have stuck, obviously, they are the ones that kind of fit into that. It's kind of like if you have maybe, like, I guess a rubber band ball is probably the easiest, physical analogy there, or metaphor. If you have this rubber band ball and you go to add a rubber band to it, it's already shaped in such a way that if that song is, if it's just a kind of a one-timer, two-timer, I mean, it's gonna pop. It's not gonna stick around. But the songs, like, I mean, you think about, some of the newer songs that have come up, like Yet Not I, but Through Christ in Me. And,
This Sunday is my first Sunday leading it.
Nice. So that's one that is definitely that's kind of one of the In Christ Alones. So it's just one of those ones that it's a rubber band that's gonna stick on that ball, and it's gonna make its way as part of that kind of organic thing that is that body. So yes, yeah. So that's the kind of the second piece. The part B is that it is organic. It has to have ability to grow and shrink.
Mm.
That songs that just aren't where we're at currently, you just don't do those. And sometimes it's natural that, hey, we're just not doing those songs just because we're not picking them. But there's also times where, hey, that song just it's just not part of who we are anymore. It's just not, it does not it's just not part of our DNA. It's not that organic matter. And so we need to remove it, because we're just not going to do that song anymore. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but that
Right.
kind of ability to grow and shrink, and be this dynamic organism, I think is what it takes to craft a good library. So, with all that said, my kind of call to your audience here and to fellow worship leaders is, I mean, this is a serious task. I know you kind of set it up that way, but just to reiterate that point, I mean, it's a serious thing, in crafting a library for your church, putting these songs not only on Sunday mornings, but throughout the week, at funerals, at weddings, at any occasion where the body is singing. That's going to be a really big deal. And so, what are they singing? That's on you.
Yeah, for sure. Those are good words. And I like to think of it, Zach Hicks's book, The Worship Pastor, was very helpful for me a few years ago when I read it about, thinking his term of a worship pastor, thinking like a theological dietitian. I actually made a video like last year. I think it's probably been a whole year ago on this channel where I kind of walked through that. So we don't have to go through the weeds of all that. Again, you can go check out that video, but I do want to highlight some of those things. And just, somebody might be watching this video. They didn't see that video. I mean, that was a year ago. Who watches old videos? You mentioned taking it seriously. Like it's one of those things that when you think about the term theological dietitian, I like to think what I pick is feeding, because I think a lot of people don't only think that way. I know I didn't used to feel that way, is that you're feeding your congregation. That's what a pastor does with the word. We are feeding people these lyrics, and we're actually forcing them to say these things. And so are we forcing them? Are we allowing them to worship their creator with lyrics that have been thought through, not just because it's new, like you said, not just because it's the tempo's right. There's a lot of things we think through, and some of that is in there. But I think first and foremost is like the content of the song, not only good and biblical, and that, there's a list of things. And I do want to mention,
yes, there is.
If you want to, I just wanted to mention that there is a checklist that I put together. We actually went to that workshop. I'll link it down below. You guys can go download that for free, just to kind of help start the wheels turning, especially if you've never thought this way before. I gotta think more pastorally. Think I'm feeding my congregation these words. So how do I need to think about that? There's it's a diet. It needs to be balanced. And so speak to maybe like the last song you taught your church, and maybe specifically how it went through that process of making it to your library.
Yeah, for sure. So the last song we taught, and sorry, I'm going to go through, I wasn't expecting this question. So let me take a quick gander. Well, I guess this is a really good one. King of Kings. So this was one of the latest songs that we taught our congregation. So our just to be honest, our MO is we typically don't do the newest songs. Now there have been stuff by City of Light and other like Sovereign Grace music and things like that we'll pick up on as soon as it comes out. Pretty much all the City of Light stuff we'll typically grab. But for most songs, especially when you consider some of the bigger, the Passions, the Hillsongs, etc., we will typically let other churches try it, see if it stays up there, and there's still, the CCLI continues to stay up there, and then a year or two later, we'll pick up on it and try it within our congregation, because we'll see, you can see the trends. CCLI is a fantastic tool that you can see those trending, how songs are trending, kind of like the Billboard Top 100, right? I mean, so you can typically tell the songs that have the staying power. So we'll find songs like King of Kings that one of our elders actually brought it up. He had heard it at a conference or at a church he was at, and so he thought, I know this is an older song. We sang it. It affected me in that moment. And so let's bring it to this vetting. Let's vet it. Let's see if it, passes the muster, all those things. And we actually were just going to do it for our Christmas during Christmas last year. And it is stuck around, and we have done it since November the 10th. We have done it 2, 3, 6, 8 times. So in the past, and a few of those were at different occasions, but mostly on Sunday morning. So for all intents and purposes, it's been a really good one. That is just, again, it captures it's got a balanced diet. It really captures the full gospel. No outright heresy, as your checklist says. So, just a really good gospel-centered song. It's very, very anthematic. Those kind of pieces, something that our church could get behind. But so as we taught our people, it was an easy one for them to learn. But that I also gave you a little bit into that vetting process. So if we want to take the moment here to dive into that. So again, as I mentioned, one of our elders said he had heard it at a service or a conference that he went to, and he brought it. And so we have a playlist on Spotify that is called Possible New Songs. So throughout the quarter, we'll add songs that we think can be added to that. So in fact, I just added a few it's so funny I'm mentioning this because songs like Glorious Day, the Passion one, we don't do that one. But I've heard it a few times over the past few weeks. So I said, I think with the way that King of Kings landed among our people and it's just a spot for a very happy song. I'm not going to get into too much of our exact library right now, but suffice it to say, being a Reformed congregation that really, really values the word, really values the Reformation doctrines and all of those, not just Calvinism, but all of the Westminster Confession. Our songs tend to be very wordy, very heady, very deep, and oftentimes can be a little bit more somber. Just in the nature of thinking through, when you think about the crowns on his head and the blood to the ground, and that it does go into that in King of Kings. Yeah. But oftentimes, when you sing things like that, you tend to stay there. And so with songs like this, you can go there, but then you're going to explode with joy when he comes out of the tomb. And so that kind of back and forth, that give and take, and the dark and light in this song really helped us. And so with Glorious Day, like having a diet of something like that, like if we were always up there with Glorious Day songs, that kind of idea is what we're after. We want to bring songs that, like they say about the Psalms, they have the broadest range of emotion. So you were, what was this flash?
I was just thinking the word, I was thinking of the word balance, if we're sticking with the diet analogy, and Zach Hicks talks about this, it's the balanced diet. You have those protein rich foods, and like steak, I love steak or bacon or whatever, but if that's all you eat all the time, that's an imbalanced diet. And so we got to have greens, we got to have, so forget the food. Like you said, the Psalms are filled with all these different emotions in our library. When you think about your next song, this is one of the things I'm always thinking are, where are the holes in my library where, I have this many songs. And I think, I've said this before, I tend to be more upbeat because I feel like a lot of churches can be, a boring, or I'll fall asleep or whatever, so, and that's not my personality. I'm like, I want to celebrate, but in order to celebrate, I say this to my church, in order to enjoy the Glorious Days songs, you got to know where you're coming from. You got to understand the grace of it. And so singing, my worth is not in what I own, and that kind of stuff, it really sets you, that's not and it is, I rejoice in my Redeemer, but that's like, first I got to realize I got to put everything in him, so I try to think through those songs. Like what you're saying is like, we want a balanced diet. So if viewers are watching this, it's like, that's what you want to think of. You might have 50 songs you're choosing from, and 40 of them are all celebration. Well, you gotta imbalance there. So start thinking through, what does my congregation actually need? I think that's a great point.
Yeah. And so we have not gone so far into this, but at my other church, I had the opportunity. It was right around the time the Rhythms of Grace came out, and this whole idea of thinking liturgically while leading was coming up, and we still think in that manner. But I really had the opportunity to go back, and I know that Zach Hicks does this and talks about this all the time. But when you think in those categories of, even if you just think the Acts model, the adoration, the confession, the thanksgiving, and the supplication, you think about even that simple model in a worship service, you've got tons of adoration. But if we're not confessing our sins corporately together, or even individually, or providing the space in a song to confess our sins, we're all the time singing about how big God is and how great God is. But if that does not impact, then it's lost. Like the effect on his greatness is lost on us, because we're still struggling in our sins. We're still tempted. We fight temptations, and all of these factors are still at play in our hearts. And if we're not giving that space in that diet, even in a regular corporate worship setting, then we're not allowing that for our congregation or even ourselves, because that's where I know you've talked about this, and Zach talks about this. We're first worship leaders. I think it's those concentric circles, right? We must worship ourselves. We must worship God in that one-on-one vertical.
We must worship ourselves. No, we do that too much.
No, we must worship God ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Let's put that in there. But then it spreads out to, you talked about this in your purpose of your channel. Like, we must shepherd our team. And so that's, every Sunday when, we pray right before the service. And that's my one call is like, okay, we're going to lead these songs. Hopefully you've been affected by them at some point during the week as you practiced. And as we've just practiced, we ran through these songs, but now, these songs, you should also worship yourselves. And so we're helping our team to worship. And then we get the broader concentric circle of helping our congregation to worship. So I think each of those checkpoints but we're providing those opportunities for each of those people, each of those groups. And so if we don't have that, if we feel like we're doing a disservice to our congregation, ultimately we're doing a disservice for ourselves, because chances are is you're not doing that in your own private study if all you're doing is singing these happy songs. So I think it's a good heart check. Like, oh wow, exactly like you said, if my library is 40 celebration songs, do I know that Psalms, like we just so last Sunday we preached our one of our elders preached through Psalm 42, and so my entire set, I mean, it's pretty dirge and lamentable and all of those factors, but we finished the entire service with Psalm 130. So out of the depths I cry to you, and so that idea that out of these depths, I mean, can you sing out of the depths? Have you been there personally? And chances are we all have. And so we're not pretending that we haven't. But are we worshiping in such a way that we acknowledge those depths? So,
man, I'm writing it down. That's good. That's good. Y'all need to write this down. That's good stuff. Yeah. And yeah.
So one of the other factors that one of my worship leaders, other worship leaders, talks about is this idea of the church militant and the church triumphant. So not just those pieces, but there are going to be opportunities where the same thing, like we're going to sing the triumphant songs, but do we have space where we're fighting sin, we're fighting evil and the devil? And so we think about hymns of a mighty fortress is our God, and just those ideas that are there. There are lots of good songs, modern songs that talk about that as well. But that whole idea that not just sorrowful and rejoicing, but also like militant and triumphant, like Christ has not returned. We are still here. Christ has not returned. You can sing in light of that day and pray, "Come, Lord Jesus, come soon." But still, we've got to have that that already not yet, right? We've got to have that fact that we're still here on earth. We are still fighting, waging war against our flesh, against the world, against the devil. And so, so our songs better reflect that, because in those moments of temptation, in those moments of having I think about you often, Jimmy, when I think about those opportunities. I still have both of my kidneys, and so I haven't faced any kind of trauma like that. But thinking about do the songs that I pick, if Jimmy's in my congregation, is that helping him through losing whatever it is, losing a spouse, losing a parent, whomever, are they helping them through that? And so even you can have triumphant songs that do that. You can have happy songs that do that, but the content therein has to lead them through that, because that's typically all they have.
I think that's great. There's this, if all you do is celebrate, there's this superficiality to it when you don't reach the depth. I think that's the point of what we're trying to get across, is that you got to, and your people are experiencing the lows, even if you're in a bubble, but most of the time we are too. But we want to show them the robustness of the gospel, and that it reaches them on the hilltop and in the valley. It reaches them in their pride and helps them, confess sin, and it touches all those areas. And so we want our library to reflect that as well. You mentioned having songs that are very wordy, and I live, we're not too far from each other, but I live right here next to the seminary. And something I'm trying to get my church to do more is to linger a little longer. Because that's not natural. It's not comfortable for us. We like the new songs like Yet Not I, which we haven't done that yet. That's this week, but I'm thinking of His Mercy is More, and My Worth is Not in What I Own. The titles are even long, they're sentences. And I love those. And we have a chunk of those. And then I'll add something that's like where it's more repetitive. And I can tell it's a little more uncomfortable, because that's not how our congregation is shaped. And I only mention this because somebody listening to this might be the exact opposite. They might only sing songs that are super simple and repetitive and contemplative or celebratory, but not get into the more theologically robust songs. And we've mentioned several of them. And I think, even Hillsong, King of Kings, that's one of those that walks through the whole thing. And so thinking about your library, there's a lot of categories to think through, but even like, how many words does it take to communicate this truth? And that's good. And then do I have some where they can just pause and reflect? And I think Zach Hicks tells in his books, he's like, somebody came up to them and was like, your songs are so good, but they're so wordy. There's so many theological truths zooming by me so quick. I don't have time to like sit in it. And I think that comes with our leadership, whether we just make time to sit in between songs and just ponder, or sometimes I'll say like, we're about to sing this truth, and I don't want it just to fling by, go by so quick. I want you to think about it and mean it when we get here and sing these lyrics. Sometimes how I'll set up a song, just because I do that as a worship leader. I hear these songs way more than they do. And so that's right. Theological truths are coming out my mouth all the time. And I'm like, what did I just say? Do I believe that? So. Yeah.
And we actually our lead pastor, one of our elders, brought that up about a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. The fact that in a given service, because most of these songs, as you've mentioned, some of them don't even have choruses. So it is 4 to 5 verses, no repeated lines. So in a given service of 5, we sing 4 songs before the sermon and 1 song after. But when we go, and we're at 2 services right now, when we go back to 1 service, we're typically singing 5 songs before the sermon, because we kind of break up our service that way. But so in any given service, you could be singing 5 songs, 4 to 5 verses in each song, 4 to 6 lines. I mean, so it's exponential growth of potential lines, and then the number of words that any person is going to sing. I mean, no person, even the most brilliant, mind could not capture every bit of that. And so I'm one to kind of push back on there's people that do not like adding choruses to hymns, but like if it helps you to stop and to reflect and to kind of synthesize or put wrap a nice bow on what is the meaning, the meat of this hymn, like Jesus paid it all. Like great words, even if you add in some of the less frequent used verses, you've got these choruses. Praise the one who paid my debt, who raised this life up from the dead. And that's boom, like that tag wraps up the entire song. And so I think if that can help to do that, if you're just adding one just to add one, then there's I think there's some debate there. But if you're adding them to help people to linger and to sit in the truth of what gospel truth is this shining on. And I remember my old pastor used to say, and I think he got this from a theologian, but the gospel in Christ is this diamond. And so when you turn, because yet not I, his mercy is more, in Christ alone. I mean, all of those songs, they're practically saying the same thing, even King of Kings, but they just give us an opportunity to take that diamond and to just shift it just a little bit. So the light shines and hits a different facet and makes you to linger and ponder and gaze at this glorious truth that, I mean, we will take, I mean, the beauty of theologians, they've given us these words, is that we will take all eternity to expound on the beauty of what Christ has done and who he is. And so there will never be enough words. There will never be enough songs to sing. And so that's, I mean, the beauty of it is that, but we can take different lenses and turn that. But those oftentimes those choruses, the moments to linger and to stop and to focus do help us to shine that light on the different facet of the gospel that particular song is honing in on.
That's so good that you said that, because I was thinking, everybody makes fun of like Chris Tomlinizing a song, there's a hymn, let me add a chorus to it,
That's a nice hymn. It'd be a shame if somebody took that meme.
Exactly. But that's a good way to think about it. It gives you that time to, like, we just did Jesus Paid It All this past Sunday, and I hadn't sung it in a while, and it was like the church received it really well. It was just and when we got to the bridge, it was like, man, now we get to really celebrate what we just sang. And it was great. We talk about, there's all the vetting steps. Is it singable? That kind of stuff.
Yes.
What's on the checklist? There's all those to walk through. But the other thing about is how often, and I think you might have said, but how often do we do new songs? Do y'all have a specific rhythm there, or?
Yeah. So our plan, and we rarely stick to the plan, is about once a quarter we will get together with this vetting committee that really is a group of our elders, our worship leaders, and a few other guys in the worship ministry that have a kind of a vested interest. And so we'll get together and we'll once a quarter, and we'll have a list of about maybe 10 to 12, and then maybe 4 or 5 will kind of make it through the thing. And the reason we bring so many people is because we do want a wide, and we feel like if it makes it through all of kind of that filter, right, then it's gonna typically be a good song, and one that's gonna stick. So about once a quarter, we'll introduce anywhere 4 to 5 songs, depending on the quarter. I mean, this past quarter we introduced 6 songs, so it was pretty. And most of those were for Christmas, but a few of them have stayed. So that's typically how often we'll introduce. And then our it's pretty set in stone, but we'll say, okay, if you're introducing a song, we encourage the worship leaders to do that song for at least the next 3 Sundays. So the first, the one guy will introduce it on a particular week, it just kind of however it falls. and then the next 2 weeks, the other worship leaders will have to incorporate it into their sets. Typically not a difficult thing to do, but yeah, we just want at least 3 times of the congregation singing it. We've started to send out our our set list via Spotify, which I know that you do that, and a lot of churches do that. But then we'll also send out, as songs have passed through the vetting session, we'll send that playlist out right then, so that people can start hearing these new songs before we sing them. I would like to get a little better at that cadence, so that people are okay, yeah, it looks like it's about once a quarter. Where are the new songs? Like, what are we going to be singing? And so that people are expectant of that. That's kind of the cadence and rhythm I want to get into. But that is the ideal, so that people would be used to them. They could hear the recordings, and then we would introduce them. We would sing them a few times, and then they would kind of be used throughout the rest of the year, 2 years, 3 years, however long they're useful. So
yeah, we have a lot of the same processes. I do when a new song comes, it's like 2 weeks on, and then the third week, we'll skip a week. But that's just how I've been doing it. And then I try to know where, to introduce the song no more than or so around once a month. Now, sometimes I'll do it. Sometimes, and it goes like this. Sometimes I have a lot of songs. I'm like, I would sing them all right now if I could, but I know that's not wise, because, and then there's other times where I don't really have anything new. And so I'm like, well, there's no pressure to add something this month if there's nothing needed, That's less times the case, but it has happened where I'm like, I feel like we did maybe, I did a couple 3 weeks instead of waiting the month. I'm like, I think they need a break. Let's just rehash some of these songs. And I think, it's May, but in April, I don't think I introduced, because we had some special stuff for Easter, but they weren't like stuff that was staying in our library necessarily. It was more like a special something for Easter. And so I don't think we really introduced anything new for April. So I was like, okay, May it's time. Now we're going to do Yet Not I. And I have a couple more that I'm like, now I'm waiting on, as soon as June gets here, boom, I'm going to do the next one. But
that's the same cadence that I'd say we would, I don't think we would ever introduce more than a new song per month. Just kind of give it that cadence. And, I guess I don't know again, I've been here about 4 years, so I've kind of seen this similar process. I'm not sure what they did before, but I have noticed, definitely the newer songs do get a lot more play time, and that is because doing the 3-week repetition. No, just overall, and we've tried to encourage. So in our small groups, we have home group worship leaders, and so we've tried to encourage them during their worship times at their home groups to sing these new songs, to help the people, just again reiterate over and over again, because we truly do feel like if we're adding this, like if a doctor tells you to go and try this new food because it's really good and it will be good for you, you don't want to neglect what your doctor says. And so it does kind of put us up a little bit, but that's a similar process. Like we're trying to tell the church, these are good songs that will be good for you. We think they are, they will minister to you. They will help you in whatever season. And so, so we do encourage the home group worship leaders to do those songs in their home groups and things like that. So, but the numbers, the graph, obviously I said I work in data for a living. And so I do pay a very careful eye to the data, and have made a lot of, done a lot of analytics on them. And and we've gotten a lot of the new songs they're just, they get a lot of value. And so I think there are a few things that I could probably attribute to that, but I just think that it's just kind of proof, like there are really, really good songs that are being written now. And our church, we're hungry for, sing to the Lord a new song, right? And not to overemphasize that point, but I do think that there is scriptural warrant that there's really good stuff in what's already been written, in the hymns and psalms and things like that. There's also, that's part of the balance too. And so I think that the church is hungry for both. And so to neglect the newer songs, for favor of that, and that's where I was at for a long time. And so I think there's obviously personally, there's an opportunity to bring that balance of new stuff as well.
Yeah, man, I think this conversation's been super helpful. There's one thing I want to say is that process of, playing it 3 weeks in a row or however you do that, like, don't make a decision on a song until you've given it time, because new songs tend to not land as well, or it just won't seem like it from the worship leader's perspective. Oh, they're not engaging or whatever. And it just takes people time to get to know a song. And so then I would also say, do what we're doing, which is putting that set list out in front, give the people a chance to listen to these songs. Because at the end of the day, the point is to allow people to sing. We want them to sing. This is congregational singing. It's not a performance. We all know that by now, hopefully. And so the point is for them to sing. If they're just not singing, what's the point? But give it some time. Let them hear it first. Let them know this is a new song. For those first 3 weeks or so, I'll say, the first time, like, hey, this is a new song. And I'll give a brief of why we just chose to introduce it, not going too in depth, but this is why I think this is good for us to sing together. And then the next few weeks, I'll remind them, like, because sometimes, what's the statistic? Like, people come to church once a month sometimes, I don't know. It's not that bad at our church, but I don't, it may be. And so you may play it those 3 weeks and some people haven't heard it yet. You might get to that third week and they're like, what's this new song? Like, remind them, hey, we learned this song this month. This is the third time we're singing it. And again, remember these themes and stuff. And so knowing that, remember, you're shepherding your people through it. Don't panic when they don't like it the first week. You probably didn't like it the first time you heard it either. You've listened to it several times. And so, don't get discouraged and just keep up with it. And I think if you develop a good process, you can trust the process more and then be willing to cut things that don't make it. There's been a couple over the past few years, a couple times where the song was great. It's still a great song, but it just didn't seem to land well after given the amount of time and asking people, like, do you like the song? And like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just funky, or just, I don't know. It's hard to sing. And, just trying to, if you're going to shepherd your people well, you got to talk with your people. And, sometimes it's kind of a joke. We have the Karens who rush up and tell us everything we don't want to know in the moment, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people you trust and getting honest feedback. And I did that in staff meeting this past week. We had a song we introduced a few months ago. I love the song. It's by a great group. It has good themes. And I just, every time we're singing, I just feel like it just feels like it's not landing well. I don't know why. I asked the worship band and they love it, but then I asked the staff guys and they were like, yeah, we kind of feel that too. And they gave some specific reasons that they wouldn't have told me had I not asked, because there's nothing really wrong with the song, but they just let me know their feelings about it. And I was like, well, the reason I'm asking is because I kind of had those same feelings. And so I probably won't be doing it. I may bring it back again later to try it, but right now I was like, well, let's just give that song a break. And that's okay.
And I think that's the vetting, like our vetting session and all of that, where we've got that wide audience that can sit through there, and hopefully we can kind of hear some of those critiques on right off the bat. Like they've heard it a few times at that point, because we do, we ask them to listen to the playlist before they come to the session, and so hopefully they've heard it a few times and they've got some thoughts and some critiques. And then we've tried, like, the next quarter, we'll try to spend a few minutes at the beginning kind of rehashing, like, okay, this is what we introduced last time. Are these still good songs? Have we kind of done our job? And honestly, 9 times out of 10, that's, the value of this group is having. So put the plug out there to your audience. If you've definitely work with your pastor. I know you've done that whole video session on what your pastor wants you to know and what your worship leader wants you to know.
Yeah.
But a relationship with your pastor or elders, hopefully they are at least on the surface level, if not intimately involved in song selection. And then also getting their feedback and also having a group of just wise and older saints that you may not agree with on the way the electric guitar sounds, but for content, for songs, they're going to be a very, very good sounding board. So I think having that group of people that you trust and that are gonna speak truth into that, rather than just kind of blowing smoke, like, man, you sounded amazing on that, and that solo was awesome. That's at this stage in the game, when we're thinking this seriously about our libraries and about the songs that we're feeding in this diet. This is not a time to for smoke to be blown. This is truly, is this healthy? And that's what we're after. So
yeah. Awesome. I think today's discussion was very helpful. Thank you for coming on the channel. We'll have to do it again. I think there's a lot more we can talk about, and you're not too awkward on camera. So let's do it again. Thank you guys for joining us today. If you like the video, do all the YouTube stuff, click subscribe, share, comment down below what your process is. I would love to hear, if you guys have something that maybe we didn't mention today, I would love to hear from you guys. I try to respond as much as I can. And we'll see you in the next video. See you, man. Thanks for coming on. Yep. Bye.
Absolutely.